welcome to what might be the end of the Archer Engine saga. I am moving on to sort of another project, and I'm going to leave this one somewhat as it is. I'm not necessarily saying I'm abandoning it or anything like that. I just feel like it's going to be better for me to move on to a different thing, which I'll get to shortly, but I want to give just kind of a quick overview of the project and just kind of make a little end cap for it. Of course, there is a big playlist of all these vlogs dating back a couple years where you can see my sometimes quick seeming progress and sometimes my slow seeming progress, but such is the way with working on your own big piece of software that's made to be something like a game engine. Well, this was the point 1 version. It was titled Ancient Archer. I started developing it in college when I started a graphics course in which they taught OpenGL. It was about a 12-week course, and near the end, when we were supposed to make our own game for a final project, I kind of got a little sidetracked with making the engine rather than an actual game. So I pretty much had an engine to show off, which I kind of fake made a game with and to show the class. But yeah, that's how this all started. And Learn OpenGL was one of the main sources for learning it. And yeah, here it is. So I wish there's one big mistake I made. At some point, I deleted all the history because it was just a giant. The history was so giant. There used to be assets in here and stuff, and those were all just in the history. But I used to have a bunch of releases. Now I did make a video of this. I think it's video 3 or 4 or 5, the series somewhere in there, that goes over all the releases. It's like the 50-minute video, but if you go through that, you'll see some of the demos I made early on with this engine, and then it became a lot more, and then I got to the point where I could start making animations and got some shadows in there, and overall, it was a great learning experience, and I could have went further with it. I could have made a game or something. It would have been real janky, but you see, we could have pieced this kind of stuff together. There's also sound. Yeah, well, I didn't really have an exact plan for this video other than to go over stuff, but the continuation of this project, just Archer Engine, which was the 2.0 version, is here. And this one I hacked on a bunch. I started refactoring, I did a bunch of things, I updated a lot of stuff. Still the same renderer, still the same sound engine, still most of the same engines. Just started refactoring a lot of things, tried to clean it up a lot, but essentially it was still the same use case. And I got to a point where I started trying to work in some dynamic shaders and completely refactor the whole thing. I was going to use, well, this is kind of where I left off. I started adding an ECS, and when I started adding an ECS, I got a good ways into it when I kind of realized something. And that's where this project switched over for me. You know, I've always been a proponent of work on something that you enjoy. If you really want to be a programmer, you got to program frequently just to get used to everything. It's just the way it is. You're going to really struggle if you don't program much, but you know, you can figure it out. There's Google and all that. So, but if you really want to get good, for example, I know that sounds very elitist, but I'm kind of a competitive person naturally. I don't really care what other people are doing or that sort of thing. I don't think you should necessarily compare to me, but it's often nice to look to each other for inspiration. And that's kind of a better mentality, I think, than being really competitive. So, yeah, I'm not really into that stuff. I'm not that social of a person, despite what you might think from watching me on YouTube. So, I tend to just want to. I don't know how to explain myself. I suppose I just feel like a giant. Greedy person or something if I only talk about myself. I'm trying to avoid the N-word. No, not that N-word. The one that starts with nar. You know, you don't want to say that. Okay, I'll just say it. If I talk about myself and my accomplishments, I'm going to sound like a narcissist. You know, I don't really, it's just a word. It's just a tag. But it's overall not a healthy mentality. We want to really get things done. We have to work together. Everyone's got to put their ego aside. If someone projects ego, it should be because they're very passionate about their idea and they really want to get their ideas across because they think they're important. Not because you actually think you're all self-important or whatever, we all are important. So that's another tricky part. I don't know, just turned into a rant of lessons learned from coding a big project and being on YouTube or whatever. As an introvert that just wants to code Well, comparison is the thief of joy. That's what it comes down to. Alright, so this was the new version. We'll just move on to talking about this. And I left it off here. I think I'm actually gonna abandon this branch should I continue to work on everything. Go back to main or dev. Everything else can be, most of these can be deleted. I think actually now it's just should be just main and dev. So I'll probably do that within the month. I want to have a look over these old branches and see if there's anything I need to really consider, because I think the big thing I did in this branch was I updated a lot of how the windowing system was in there, and I might want to keep some of that because I don't want to have to refactor it again. But anyway, nothing else really I don't think needs to be kept. So what am I working on now? I am working on a private project. It is a game, I will say that much. And I'm writing it from scratch, no engine, and that's all I'm going to say about it right now. But my main goal is to get that released. You probably saw my video from 2 videos ago where I kind of expressed that I'm just basically going to go on a bit of a sabbatical, you could call it, after this month. So all of November to next year, November, I'm going to attempt to remain off pretty much all social media. The only way I'll be accessible is through private message, and I'll be locking down a lot of the just platforms, just to a more elitist fashion, if you will. Just a little less spam, a little more quality. That's always the goal with life. Well, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Matt from Code Tech Tutorials, over and out for the last time, hopefully. Or not necessarily hopefully, but in theory of this series. Goodbye.